Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Changing the Climate, a show where we talk about the changing world around us and how we can make it better. Brought to you by Climate Change Realty. Alrighty, hello, everybody, and welcome back, of course, to another episode of Changing the Climate. Welcome to Season 3. We are excited to be bringing this show all the way through the end of 2021 and to the future. And I am very lucky and excited, as always, to have my guest, Angela Maria Ortiz Roa.
Sí, hola.
Hola, happy to have you. And of course, we always get the show started with a little bit of background on who you are and how you got to be doing what you're doing at the moment.
Wow, thank you. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited about being part of your podcast. Like you said, my name is Angela Maria Ortiz Roa. My preferred pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am originally from Bogota, Colombia. And I migrated to the US in 2001. So I've been here now for a long time, feels like. And I think I'm just here because of a set of values and principles that were taught to me in my childhood about what was important and how I was to relate to the people in my community, to the planet that I live in. And I think it's just been a journey of materializing and living those values. So I think that's a short answer. I can give you a lot more besides that. But we can dive in as you ask more questions.
Oh, and we definitely will. And I'd love to hear about some of the most important values that you've learned over your lifetime.
Sure. I mean, definitely, I think my mom was just somebody that was always talking about care for people and care for the planet and just the biggest joy being found in giving and caring for others. So I think I am very collective in the way that I live life, and I think has really guided a lot of the work that I do, even as a young woman, and now as a not so young woman. It just always guided that, and I feel real lucky because I have been able to always work in areas that are in service of community. And it's been a long journey. I feel like definitely I was not prepared to live the life of an immigrant. I feel like I was a very proud and excited Colombian, ready to get started to use my political voice when I was 18. And suddenly within like 6 to 8 months, my life changed and I moved to the US. And
Oh, wow.
that definitely had a huge impact in the way that I relate to that community, because for a minute I didn't feel like I belonged. And it's not till very recently that I started feeling like this is me now. So yeah, I think just those values of service um and collectivism, I think that's really strong in the way that I live life, the way that I raise my son, and the way that I do my job. So
Hell yeah. Well, beyond a doubt, I feel like living a life of service is one of the most fulfilling ways to spend your time. When you see the impact that you have on other people, it makes you feel like you're being the best version of yourself. And I just love that kind of stuff. And I try to spread those values to more and more people. I'm curious what prompted you to actually feel like you had to move to the US. What was going on there?
Uh, back then, my opportunities back in Colombia were very limited. I finished my high school, but because of financial instability that I grew up in, I didn't get access to my grades, my records. So I had no proof that I had gone to school, and my parents didn't have the financial means to like help me go to continue to educate myself. So at that time, I had the opportunity. There was a family that invited me to come here to just give it a try. And like I said, I feel like it was just so quickly. I really never, I went to a bilingual school, and I remember being like, why the heck am I learning this language? I'm never going to go there. I don't even want to go to the US. And suddenly I was like, oh, I'm not only going to the US, I'm going to move and live in the US. So that was a little crazy. And I came here, with the idea of, furthering my education, but really I just encounter just a whole world. I came here and
Totally.
I, just I've been supporting myself financially my whole life. So it took
Whoa.
me a long time. I actually just finished my bachelor's degree, which is why I came
Woo-hoo.
before, like
Congrats.
in May. So, but it took me forever, so yeah, it's been a long journey, but it's been just a journey just filled with adventure and wonderful people along the way.
Yeah, I mean that's the way the journey should be. We're happy to have you here, and thanks for coming on the show. Obviously, did you come here knowing no English at all?
No, I went to a bilingual school. I
Oh,
went to
you
a
went to
bilingual school
bilingual.
in Colombia. Yes. I just didn't understand why I was learning it because my parents didn't have money to
Mm-hmm.
come and I didn't really want it to come. And then, the universe had different plans. So I guess and
Yeah,
when I moved here, I definitely felt, just knowing the language is a huge privilege. So
beyond a doubt.
yeah, I got that going on.
Really, really cool. Um, so you're up to like a lot of different things from I did my research on you. Seems like you're involved in a lot of different programs, all stuff that I'm very interested in as well, which is why I'd love having you on the show. But I'm curious what like your main occupation is at the moment.
That's a really good question. And
Yeah.
in Spanish, I say that I am a tolera, like I do a little bit of everything. So
Oh yeah.
that
Cool.
is very true. I have my
Amazing stuff too, as we're gonna get into.
I have my hands in a lot of different things. I think is what creates, like, what really fuels my creativity. And but I think the thing that I am the most involved with, besides being a mom, is
Most important job.
yes. I coordinate a program called Flows,
Mm-hmm.
which stands for the Foundations for Leaders Organizing for Water and Sustainability. So it's a nice, powerful, long name that a lot of people don't remember. And luckily, we have a nice acronym that is Flows. And Flows is a partnership between the Environmental Center at CU Boulder, which I know you had a couple of guests from the Environmental Center,
Love
and
them.
also the Housing Authority here in the city of Boulder, so Boulder Housing Partners. And what Flows does, it's a couple of things, but I think we have a very strong eco-social justice focus, right? So we live and function and operate in that intersection between environmental and climate justice and social justice, right? And we believe that the issues that we experience are intersectional and we need to address them from the different dimensions that where they're created. So we definitely never separate the environment from the people. So we focus on that. We are very strong in our perspective of viewing the communities that we serve, which are immigrant communities, low-income communities, BIPOC communities, queer communities. So it is our intention to really view these communities from an asset based perspective. So I think we live in a society where we tend to look at each other uh, from a deficit mind, right? So we always, like, especially when we look, for example, the low income communities, oh, pobrecitos, oh, they just don't have the resources, oh,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have the education, oh, blah, blah. And I think that pobrecitos, that like looking down upon people, is a big part of the issue. And we cannot solve the issue with that perspective. I think that on the
Sure.
contrary, we have these communities that are some of the most thriving, creative, resourceful, resilient communities. And what we do is just really celebrate the practices a lot of people have. A lot of them are eco-cultural roots, right? Eco-cultural values. And so we try to talk a lot about that, and also just elevating the leadership, because sometimes we think that sustainability and the solutions live only in academia and policy making spaces, and and we try to just bring it back, bring that sustainability dialogue into everyday's life for people in a way that they relate to it. Because sometimes they like sustainability and like, oh no, I'm not a sustainability person. Like that,
Mm-hmm.
I never went to school for that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, do you like hang out your clothes after you dry them to dryness? And they're like, yes. And they're like, do you reuse your containers? And they're like,
Cool.
yeah. It's like, they're your sustainability leader right there. People are like, oh, I had no idea that's sustainability. I thought it was like this thing that lives in PhDs and, masters and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful and really exciting work to celebrate the leadership and the wisdom that we have in those communities.
That's amazing. I definitely want to dive in more to talking about what you guys do at Flows. But I'm curious why do you think we have this tendency to like look down on other people? It seems like it's so common now, but we're all kind of sharing this one world. And like I understand we live in like these different hierarchies and we all come from like a different starting place. But why do you think it's so common for people to be like, oh, that person is not good enough for this, or like, oh, I shouldn't be involved with that. That person is academia when we're all kind of trying to share the same resources and everyone wants the same stuff. Everyone wants to succeed, be happy, have a happy family. And if you like drinking water, we should also sustain the water as well. So I don't know, I just wanted to ask you about that.
Well, that's a complicated question, I
For
think.
sure.
But I mean, if you really wanted me to answer it, I would say that it is the way that we have been conditioned to think about each other. And I think
Mm-hmm.
really it's rooted to me in colonialism, right? I think it's the moment that we're trying to assert power over others and try to take over. We must bring people mentally, physically down, like they're still their humanity and their power, so that we can place ourselves above them and establish that dominance. So I feel like it really
Mm-hmm.
comes from that, and it really stems. And I think people are like, "Oh, but that's so long ago, and we're not dealing with it." And
It's
it's
not
like, I
that
think
long ago.
we're dealing with all the consequences and all the pain and all the trauma that brought. I mean, a lot of our social structures, a lot of our political structures are rooted in that first contact,
Mm-hmm.
and the way that our religions and our politics and our systems were just established in that hierarchy. And I think that's in order to maintain certain dynamics, we have to preserve those superiority or
Sure.
inferiority perspectives. I
For
think so.
sure.
It's
No,
complicated.
yeah, life is complicated, and I really appreciate you giving a response like that. I think that makes a lot of sense. But how do you think we can, or how have you found in your life a way to decondition yourself out of like these systems and out of this programming that we're always getting bombarded with advertising? We go through this system of education. We all have these kind of program ways of thinking. When you're looking to be more of a servant or lead a more virtuous life, what do you find as effective ways to decondition yourself and kind of humanize everyone around you?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a lifelong journey. I feel like
Definitely.
it's like self-inquiry. I think it's constantly
That's huge.
exploring your blind spots. I think understanding that we all have them, and then sometimes it's really uncomfortable to recognize that you have stuff like that happening. And I think it's not shying away from that discomfort, but kind of embracing it in efforts to transform yourself into in a better version of you, right? So I think it's constantly just like looking and be like, what's happening? Why did I say that? Or why did I feel that? Or why did that person reacted to me? I didn't have, and I think it's just having an open mind and open heart. I believe that I think one of the most beautiful things that we can achieve is understanding that we are very different. And
Mm-hmm.
not only in our skins, in our values, in our languages, we are very different. I think trying to strive for that homogeneidad, like all that, for everybody to be the same and think the same, and like, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's ridiculous, and I think
Sure.
it's not possible. On the contrary, I think, and if you look at nature, I mean, the healthiest places are the ones that have the most variety, the ones that
Oh,
are the most diverse. And I
yeah.
think that is very powerful if we're able to continue to look at yourself with compassion, and with that desire and that commitment to stick through it, even though it's uncomfortable, even though you might have to go and apologize to somebody and say, I had no idea what I was doing, but I learned and I'm so sorry. Please keep me in check.
Yeah.
I
I
think
love
that's it.
that.
But it has to be very conscious. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, I think the moment that you start noticing these things, you cannot notice them anymore. So,
Right.
sometimes like ignorance is a bliss, but I think that responsibility of looking and constantly checking yourself, it's what allows for you to like deconstruct some of that narrative that rules the world. So
Sure.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and beyond a doubt, we have too many problems going on for people to kind of just be like, "Oh, I'm just going to stay ignorant. I'm not going to try and improve myself." I think we need everybody to kind of get on this journey to try and become the best version of themselves they could possibly be, because we need all hands on deck. So getting back into flows, I'm just curious, like, what's the day-to-day workflow kind of look like at flows?
Sure. You know what's funny with now and now, we're like pre-COVID,
Mm-hmm.
COVID times. It was very different. I mean, Flows is definitely a contact program. Like we are in the community. And what we
Awesome.
used to do, so there's different things, right? So Flows is a partnership, like I said, between the Environmental Center and Boulder Housing Partners. So our team is composed of residents of the communities that we serve and students that reflect the identities of the communities that we serve, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and so we put these teams together. Before COVID, we will offer home visits to people, and we will offer like a really basic water and energy audit. So we will come in pairs and change the faucet raters so that they use less gallons per minute, change the shower heads. We talked about behaviors about around consumption, like I said, always very much from a celebratory place, not like preachy, because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
when somebody's preaching you how to live, like it's like that, like nope.
Especially in this country.
Yeah, oh Lord. And so that was like the mechanics of the program. Like, like we changed faucet raters, we checked that the refrigerators were working properly, that there were no toilet leaks. And in the meantime, we're also talking to the resident about their behaviors, always, kind of highlighting the positive and the things that are doing. And then maybe be like, hey, did you know that when you're not charging your phone and the plug's still in the wall, like it's drawing energy? So next time, like once you're done plugging, unplug it. People are like, oh, I had no idea.
I
Like
don't
little,
think I knew that either.
hey, there you go. It's called a phantom load. It's
Yeah.
just pulling. So anything that is plugged in your walls, even if you're not using them and they're not on, they're drawing out energy. So we tell that to people. People are like, oh, I had no idea. But people are more willing to try certain things when you recognize all the other stuff that they're doing. So like a little nice sandwich. So positive, a little idea to change, and a lot of other positive, right? So I think it's like so much easier to receive a
Definitely.
message when there's celebration around what you are already doing. So that was Flows. We visited around, I think, close to like 500 of Boulder Housing Partners homes. And since 2016, when the program started as a
That's
pilot,
wow.
until I think the end of 2018. So we knocked at every door. These services are
I've been
totally
there.
voluntary. People don't have to have it. But people most of the times were like coming in, and we had these beautiful conversations in the spaces where are the safest for people, which are their homes. Like we're coming into their sacred space. So like they're the ones in power. They're the ones who tell us, like how they live their life. And we just listen, we learn from them, and then we provide a little bit of ideas that maybe they have not thought about. So that was Flows in the community. And then to our team of technicians that are residents and students, we always provided green job skills trainings, right? So we have learned about just making biochar. We've learned about installing solar panels. We have learned how to install the water. This is always a hard one. The rainwater catchment systems. We
Mm-hmm.
did that at a trailer park, so that we hooked the gutters to big barrels to collect rainwater for the gardens. And we've done We've done a lot of training around eco-social justice and leadership of color so that we understand the power that we have in our communities, knowing that sometimes here in Boulder, we lack a little bit of that diversity. So I think it's important for us to remind ourselves of looking for leaders that look like that, and that they don't look like the dominant concept of what a sustainability leader looks like. So that's been like our internal trainings for a group.
Mm-hmm.
The community, right? We have helped collect feedback from community members for the climate action plan for the city of Boulder. Yeah, so we just and in touch with community. I think so when COVID hit, we were about to roll out like a second round of home visits that was going to include the topic of indoor air quality.
Mm-hmm.
And however, that was a little scary, and we were all really stressed out there for a minute. So we felt like it was, one, we couldn't really be in touch with people, and two, it felt a little tone deaf for us to be like, hey, like we might not know where we're paying rent with or how we're buying food, but here's an indoor air quality monitor.
Right.
Felt like it was not the right thing. So instead, during the pandemic, we just kind of focused a lot on food access. I think that was really important at the pandemic, knowing that we saw some disruption in some of our systems, and that we were, like running out of supplies in certain areas. And so we focused a lot on like local food production. We were able to host 2 virtual learning series where we invited like residents. Many of them are personal friends or my neighbors that are leaders, are permaculturists, are healers, are so it was just it continued to be a celebration of the power and leadership in our communities, just virtually. So yeah, that's what we did in the pandemic. And right now, now that we're coming back or coming out of it, it's time for us to again reassess and see what we can do in this like hybrid world where we still kind of healing from the trauma that this pandemic brought to us as a community. And then how can we implement programs that continue to foster that sense of collectiveness that I think we need.
Yeah, and I love that. And I'm hoping to see you guys back out there, because it sounds like the stuff you're doing is really cool, and it's amazing to get really involved with the community and just teach them, hey, you're doing some stuff right and you can do better, and we all can as well. But on that thought, I'd love to ask you about your experience with urban agriculture and food justice. You're involved with this group, Food Justice, right?
I am involved with Boulder Food Rescue. Yes.
Boulder Food Rescue.
Yes, a BFR. Boulder Food Rescue is just one of the raddest, coolest organizations we have in town. And my relationship to food is interesting. Like I come from like a culture that loves food, right? Like, I mean, I think all cultures love food, but like
say that.
But my dad's side of the family very much into cooking, and I think that's how we all showed love. Is like, hey, we went there and we brought you this, or hey, you're coming, what do you want me to cook for you? And then when I moved here, one by myself at 18, and I was like, wait, how do you cook those things again? And
over the phone.
I was like, please, like, what's the recipe? And I think my aha moment with food was when I came here. I had been here for a couple of months, and I was trying to like follow the recipes that my parents were providing, and I would make the food and I will eat the food and I would feel so sick. Like I would like feel bloated and uncomfortable. And I was like, why? I mean, I'm following the recipe. I have relatively the same ingredients, like what's happening? So that was the first moment that I started looking at food production in this country. And I was like, wow, it's just the practices here are so different, like so large scale, like, so that's my first moment that I was like, food is different. Like it looks the same, but it's different. Right. And then, later on in life, it became real again when I became pregnant. And I was like, what do I eat to make a healthy baby? And then it's like, I think at that time, it's like the organic thing was coming really strong. And so I started learning about these things. And I've been really lucky to have a lot of really cool and smart friends. And a lot of them were like permaculturists. And they're like, yeah, there's this thing. And I was just like, So I started learning about just how not nutrient dense the food can be here, right?
Definitely.
And that was one of the things that I was just like, wow, I want to learn how to grow my own food because now I have to feed this baby. And I don't not necessarily trust what's happening in the grocery stores and all these labels of organic stuff. So those were my first moments of like, I want to learn how to grow my own food. Then I took a permaculture design course, and that just kind of, from that, somebody was like, hey, we need somebody that is bilingual to like manage this community garden. You want to do it? And I was like,
Hold
no,
on a sec.
like, yes.
What is permaculture?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question. Permaculture. So it's a design system, which I think people related definitely to like your gardens and food
Mm-hmm.
production, but I think it really is related to everything. I think you can relate it to social structures. So permaculture, like permanent cultures, regenerative cultures, you are trying to look and observe what's happening in nature and kind of mimic that in your design so that your
Oh.
designs are self-sufficient, and you have to reduce the amount of input that you're putting besides the system kind of maintaining itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing new. This is all indigenous knowledge. We just repackaged it and are selling it for really high prices in some places. But
Okay.
it's all indigenous knowledge. It's what our communities, our campesinos, and our hills in every country have been doing. Using water smartly, like observing the patterns, using the sun, using microclimate, using the edge. So it actually has three ethics, which I think that was the most beautiful part for me, because it's the care for the people, the care for the planet, and sharing the surplus is the ethics of permaculture. And I was like, I've been living my life based on these principles. Like, this is me.
Awesome. Yes.
So it was really sweet. And I think you can totally, it has a set of like 12 principles, like observation, slow and steady solutions, reduce waste. Like and you can live by those principles, even if you never grow a tomato in your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful way of looking at life. But I feel like it's been, a friend said, it's like, it's the flavor of the month, like it's like
Mm-hmm.
really popular right now, and people pay a lot of money to learn how to do it, when in reality is just indigenous knowledge again.
Very interesting.
So uh, I took that course, and somebody was like, "You want to manage this garden?" And I was like, "Hell no! I've grown one tomato plant." And I was like, "Do that it says." And I was like, "There's no way." And then somebody's like, I had a mentor of mine, this beautiful Cubana, this Isabel Sanchez from Cuba. She's like, "Do it, do it, do it, do it." And I was like, "I don't know how to do it." She's like, "You know more than the people that are there. Go." And I was like, and I went from managing one tomato to managing like 20 tomato plants. It was like so much more. We were producing
Awesome.
half a ton every summer. It was
This
beautiful.
is in Boulder somewhere?
Actually, this was in Commerce City. For a long time,
Okay.
I was not quite connected to Boulder. I
Mm-hmm.
lived in Boulder. I lived in Boulder a long, long time, but like a lot of the work that I did was in Denver, Commerce City. And that just, I think out of all the justices that I think that I touch and that I want to be part of the solution for, I think food is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So,
Amazing.
and then I met Boulder Food Rescue and the organization, and I was in this process of, like learning how to join a board, and now feeling that responsibility that many in my community don't plug in because they don't have the capacity. Many
Mm-hmm.
places have language access obstacles, and I said, I have to do it. I have to do it for all those who cannot say something. I have to, right? Or they don't have, not they can't, but they don't have some platforms to magnify their voices. So I did it. I joined the board for Boulder Food Rescue, and it's been just a fantastic experience. And it was amazing to see that organization spring into action and be so crucial for our communities during the pandemic, when people were like not being
Yes.
able to.
So what are they doing?
So what they do is they redistribute food. So you know how there's so much food waste, right? So what
Mm-hmm.
this organization
It's
does is
insane.
goes and gets all this, like the food that has the tomato that has the blemish that nobody buys at the store because we like everything to look the same. Like they get
Yeah,
all the stuff and they bring it to the community. So they're removing several obstacles in the process, because for many people, some of the obstacles to access healthy food is transportation and the cost of food, right? And so these people bring all this food to the community, and the community then organizes themselves. Each community where they have a place of delivery has organized themselves to create a redistribution process within their communities, and it's free of charge. Anybody can get the food. There's no documentation required for people to access the service. People just, and people, sometimes some communities have decided that the person that is in charge of helping redistribute in the community makes bags for everybody, and the person knows that, oh, Ethan likes this, so I sent him
mm-hmm.
that. In other communities, like people line up and they go through the line. I said, I want that, I want this, like, so it is just amazing. And they have played a huge role during the pandemic to, like, the amount of extra delivery or new distribution spots in the communities increased during the pandemic. And it was great to be part of that work. It was great to see the staff of that team be so quick at reacting. And they had, luckily, the system that they operate under was very good for what the pandemic needed, because
Definitely.
people didn't need to go to the grocery stores. The food was coming into their communities. They could be delivered outdoors. People could be spaced out. It was just amazing. So
Yeah.
I'm a proud BFR board member.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like an amazing organization. And I'm so happy that there's people like that out there who are willing to kind of do work like that. And but I can't help but think about how that's kind of like a band-aid solution to like a broken bone. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what is there a way for us to change the system so we're not wasting tons of food that creates organizations to give food to people for free? Why couldn't like the system work so that everything is distributed out and we use all the resources sustainably? And the same idea with like going to people's houses and teaching them how to live sustainably. Can't we just build homes so they're more like sustainable and waste less energy? And beyond the food at the grocery store, I think Americans waste like 50% of the food that they even buy. So it's like, why are we living like this if it doesn't make any sense?
I agree with you. And it's funny because I was just having that conversation with my partner last night. And he's a very optimistic. It's funny because I do this
Good.
work. I'm like, we can do it. But sometimes I'm like, oh, people, how could you? And he was like, oh, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay.
Hmm.
And it's like, I cannot wait till that okay. Like, it feels so
Yeah.
far away. But I was telling him that I think the important thing is that you do your best right now. Like,
Yeah.
independently what's going to happen, even independently we're going to make it or not make it, or we're going to run out of water or not water. Like, I think the important thing is, like, yeah, that I could tell you that I could die tomorrow and I feel like I did my best. I've been trying
I
my
love that.
best, like and I can tell you that. Of course, I have crappy days, and there's days that I'm like, oh, stupid people, like. but in general, I'm like really committed and really just I want to be part of the solution. That's
Hmm.
it. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, what the question that you're raising there is tough, because it's
Totally.
such, I mean, creating systems, and their systems have been in place for so long. I mean, and yes, we can create these homes that are, more self-sufficient and better designs and all that stuff. But really, I feel like it is related on, like, what are we're being taught to consume. We're being taught that consume equals status, social status. If you can buy anything at any time, or you can leave your water open and not have to worry about it, gives you status. You have social status. The person that has their water fountain, the person that can turn around and buy a Tesla, like, it gives
Mm.
you status, instead of like minimizing and simplifying our ways. And I think that's the issue. I think that's what we should try to change, is like, we don't need to have everything new. We don't need to buy everything uh, all the time. Like, just, I don't know.
No,
It's
yeah. No, keep going. I'm loving it. We need a culture shift, and the alternative is collapse, in my opinion. People might think I'm a little out there, but like from my study, it seems that this system of endless consumption just inevitably leads to an empty plate. I don't know, you know.
I agree. Agree. This is what we're doing to our planet. It's like we're just like extracting, and all of our needs to like change and buy the plan so that we lease the car so that every 2 years we can change it, or we sign
Hmm.
a contract with whoever your phone provider is so that every time there's a new iPhone, you get it new. Like, all that is just like extraction. All that stuff equates extraction somewhere else, and usually it's not in your face. So that's where you're like, whatever, I just want a new iPhone, because you're not there
No.
seeing where they're mining all the stuff that is needed to make your iPhone, right? But
Yeah.
it's huge. It's huge. And I'm glad. I feel like the more that we talk about it, the more we normalize this, the more we normalize the narrative, and we, plant each other's ideas as seeds in our minds. And you make me think of things that I never thought. And I hope I make you think of things that you've never thought about before. And like everybody that's listening to us, we do that the same. Like, but it has it's is and that's the part that when I was telling my partner yesterday, I cannot think about it being like, oh, it's gonna be solved like like 1,000 years from now. So don't worry, it's gonna be solved. It's like 1,000 years from now, I'm not gonna be here, my kid is not gonna be here, but at least I'm thinking about it and doing something about it now.
Yeah. And
even
thank you
if
for
I,
doing that.
Even if it collapses, we're trying.
I'm on board with you. I'm in the complete same attitude. Let's talk a little bit about your thoughts on inclusiveness in regards to like environmental stewardship, like how having more inclusion and diversity of thought, like we were talking about how we go back and forth and have different ideas. We can all have a space where we can talk freely and have all sorts of different people talking. How does that relate to taking care of the planet overall in a better way?
Well, I think again is that idea of like diverse places being the most resilient in nature, right? So I feel like the more voices, the more ideas, the more perspectives we can include anything, the richer that field or becomes, right? So I think and that's something that we really celebrate and try to encourage in flows. Like we have a group, I think probably right now we have around 10 technicians that are part of a group, and we are so different. Not only do we come from very different countries in the world, we speak very different languages, we all look very different, but we're very different in the way that we look at the problem and the way that we think that the solution is, right? So what is beautiful is that we've been able to create this space where I'm like, that I'm not in agreement with you. Like, and you can be like, okay, Angela, like, and we don't have to be in agreement. I think the powerful thing is that we can sit in the space, be in disagreement, and still love and care for each other and respect each other. And I think that's part of the importance of inclusion is really, this is all of ours responsibility. I think part of the issue is that separation that happened, right? Like
Hmm.
they separated people from the land, they separated people from each other, and they made this like invisible lines and borders so that we couldn't cross them. And I think that's part of the issue is that disconnection. Like we just, I've always talked, especially based on my immigrant experience, like if you don't feel like you belong, why care for it? Like I think that's the most important thing, is to make people feel like they belong. And I think that's why immigrants are so good at this, because we've already crossed
Hmm.
borders physically and in our minds. Like we belong to two or three different places at the same time. So it's easier for somebody to be like, and now I'm not just Colombian like I was when I was 18. I am like, I'm a citizen of the planet. Like, like I've lived here, I live there. So I think that sense of belonging and belong in the way that you are, not belonging because you and me are the same. And now we belong because we look the
Mm-hmm.
same and talk the same and think the same. But you belong independently of who you are and how you live. And I think that sense of belonging, the moment that you take care of your home, when you feel like it's yours and you care for it. So allowing for people to feel that way independently of who they are and how they think of things, I think is really important. And understanding that being different from each other is a beautiful thing, because we get to
Yeah.
learn so much more from each other. And we all thought the same and spoke the same and agreed on everything. How boring.
Yeah. Well, can you tell me about a time where someone who was very different from you had an opposing point of view to yours and they actually changed your mind and you feel like you became smarter just from chatting with them?
No, that's an interesting question. I remember one time, and I don't necessarily need think that the moment that you change your mind or change somebody else's mind is the aha moment necessarily, more than just being able to have the dialogue, even if people don't change their mind, like having the dialogue in a way that is respectful, even in disagreement. I think that's the power more than changing everybody else's mind. But
Mm-hmm.
I remember, for example, just to give you an idea, similar to what you just asked, like, for example, we have inflows people from different countries, and there was this one time this guy from Venezuela, uh, and we were talking like, how can we make people, especially people that have the financial means to like not care around so much about their consumption because they can pay for it,
Mm-hmm.
care for the resource, right?
Definitely.
Like, and in Venezuela, and it happened to me in Colombia, and people were like, maybe we should do campaigns, maybe we should do a block party, maybe we should we're like brainstorming all kinds of ideas. And this guy was like, get up, he's like, what we need to do? We need to do what we did in Venezuela when I was growing up, which is like, you just shut off the water, like there's no water like for 3 days, and people have to collect water and use what they collected, and that's gonna give people perspective, like
Whoa.
like, we were like, let's have like a parade and let's and he was like, no, let's like cut the water. And it's true, like,
Yeah.
that, and it was really opposing to like what we were trying,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a very,
Intense perspective.
yeah, it's also a solution. There is like hardcore, and we grew up that way. I grew up with the
Mm-hmm.
electricity being shut off at certain days and water being shut off certain days.
Wow.
And it gives you, and it was like, he was like, yeah, shut the water off and have people have to go and pick up water and then take it up to their apartment on the 13th floor without an elevator and see how careful they're going to be about that water, like. So you see, like, and that's what we're trying to rescue with flows, is like those experiences have made a lot of us be so much more thoughtful about how we consume. And in the transition of moving into this country and assimilating here, where like you have the dollar stores and Target and like everything's so easy and fast and cheap, and like, so we're
That's
trying to be like,
crazy.
no, don't go to that, stay here, like don't start eating McDonald's, keep eating your beans and rice, like. So I don't know if that was exactly what you were asking, but I feel like it was just like a moment of
Yeah.
like moment, and we were like, wow, it's so different and yet so true what he was mentioning. And
Mm-hmm.
it's exciting to hear when people get passionate and throw out like all these crazy ideas, and you're like, actually that would be great. Can you imagine if we were to shut off the water in Boulder?
Oh, people would lose their minds. I mean, these people are paying
Exactly.
$5 million for their houses, so they'll probably lose their
Right.
mind.
And
Yeah.
that's your field.
For sure. It's crazy, and it's interesting to be like the climate change realtor and be into minimalism and not materialistic at all, and then be trying to work with like these people to get some of their resources into the stuff that I'm interested in. It's fun. I want to talk a little bit about water sustainability. What's like the most important things to know about being more sustainable with our water usage? Because I'm concerned about this, especially here in the Midwest.
Yes. I think something that is important, and I'm still not all the way well versed around this, but there is a lot of laws around our water, which you would think is
Yeah.
like, oh, it's a resource, it's in the nature, like, but there's a lot of laws about water and the way that water flows through our state and where the water comes from and who has rights to pick it up and who has, like, and that's something I've been learning a lot from my mentor, Michelle Gabrieloff Parrish, who was a Flows founder. And she's been working a lot with the Colorado River and how it, it has many of those laws have made it so that the water never reaches the delta and it never gets to Mexico. And so it is a resource that we have. It is a resource that we're contaminating, and our water is limited. We don't have endless water, and I think it's just I don't know. I think we need to ask the indigenous communities that question.
All right. Well, let's talk about that. That was my next question. Is some key takeaways from your study of like ancestral living in like indigenous communities and how that compares to our more like Western society.
Right. Well, definitely our indigenous communities are the original stewards of the land, the original environmentalists, the
Yeah.
ones it was just part of the culture and the values. It was just like there was not this connection from the land. It was we're part of it, right? And we honor it and have cycles in it because we're in it, right? So I think that has been just very humbling. I feel like Flows is committed to open spaces for those voices to lead, because I feel like now that we're like in like a very critical moment, I think people are starting to be like, wait, indigenous knowledge, wait, permaculture, but we're not letting the communities be the ones that lead. We're taking the knowledge and applying it in certain places, but it's not the communities that are leading a lot of the time. So I think that's what we need to do. I think we should just get out of the way and let people that have had this connection and had these values and had this way of living in nature with in balance with nature, to be the ones that lead us. I feel like I think that could be part of the reparations that we owe a lot of these communities. Is just to have access to land and to continue those practices that were stolen, and now we package permaculture and sell it for thousands and thousands of dollars a course, when in reality it's indigenous knowledge, and the majority of the people I'm telling you that are teaching those courses are not indigenous people.
Right. Yeah, well, that gets back to what we were talking about earlier, the stigma of how we look down on other people because they're different from us or they have different views. But at the end of the day, as soon as we like their idea, we'll just take it, repackage it, and say it was our own, and then spread it around. So it's all dense, complicated topics, and I'm happy to just kind of go over everything with you today. One of the last questions I wanted to ask you is, how do you stay optimistic when you're aware of how many horrible things are going on and how we all live in these systems that we either respect or we don't, and we want to make them better, but see, you're talking about it being successful 1,000 years down the line, and you and I both know we need more effort today. So maybe an experience that has led you to be optimistic, because you seem like a very optimistic, positive person, which is why it's been really fun talking to you. And I'm just not worried, sorry, curious about how to continue this for myself, my audience, and everyone else around us amidst conflict.
Oh, yeah. I think that's a very good question. It's tough sometimes, actually. I kind of like, and I'm such an open heart person, like, so it just really hurts. Like the reality of people and our planet is like really in my body. I feel it. So it's very important for me to find that balance, because it can be debilitating and I think unhealthy too, to let that kind of live there. And I think the way that I balance that out, one is through the work that I do. And I feel like really like every day I'm like, that, like through the way that I'm raising my child, through the way that I live my life, through the way that I do my work, and through the way that I connect with people. But I think one of the things that keeps me the most positive is that I am just in love with people. I think that I just, I I'd really have eyes that want to look at the beauty and the positive of what we all have, independently of the package on the outside, like, so I'm just a people lover. I think that people are creative, people are, and I think that inspires me. I think that's one of my biggest inspirations, is just being able to see and appreciate people, and always be, try to be as compassionate, because you don't know what's happening with that person, or why they're acting that way, or why they're being hurtful you don't know what happened to them, and that could be just a reaction to like protect them, like you have no idea. So I feel like I have this capacity to look at people from a very compassionate place in my heart, and that gives me hope, because you usually can find the issue that is the reason why people are acting a certain way is rooted usually in sadness or anger or trauma or something. So if we were able to like give that person that little love in that place where they hurt, then people will be better. But I also have to think about the now. Like, I cannot think if we're going to make it, if we're not going to make it. Like, that is really concerning and scary to think about. And I just have to think about the now, and knowing that I'm doing my best, and I'm doing my best for the people that came before me. I'm doing my best for the people that are gonna come after me. So again, I think that's an indigenous idea of the 7 generations, right? I feel like that's wisdom there again, and it's indigenous wisdom that I've learned about, and it makes a lot of sense. You just do your best. You have the responsibility on the now to beautify and make the spaces that you inhabit better, and leave them better than what you found them.
For sure. And I don't think there's any better way to live in the now than to spend time with people that you care about. When you're in that moment with your best friend or your spouse or your kid, that's when you really feel like the most alive, in my opinion. Yeah. So I love that answer. That I think I'm on the same path. We need to get, so that's why good thing COVID's over, because we need to get out there and socialize again, because I'm dying for it. Last question.
I'm gonna tell you something. I'm gonna tell you, COVID is not over. COVID is not over, because maybe our Boulder County, we're like 70% but in reality, the rest of the world is still locked in, and people don't have access to the vaccines. And like people like me right now, I'm like, oh yeah, let's go socialize. I have an uncle that is in a coma for a while, like, like, so I think it's important to recognize that a lot of people are still in it.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I get caught up in my own little life sometimes, in this little Boulder bubble.
We're very privileged, and it's great. And we can definitely celebrate some of those blessings that we've had. I just wanted to make sure, because I feel like we've been talking about that a lot. Like, I'm about to go to Colombia, and I'm like, oh, we're like going to concerts here already. And I was like, wait, people are like trapped in their apartments still over there, like.
Wow.
So it's awful. Like a reality that, is very, very contrasting. And I'm like, wow, it's amazing, especially our Boulder County. We're very well resourced here. So
we are.
You were going to ask one more question, right?
Yeah, I always love to ask people just advice they have for young folks who are passionate about environmental justice, social justice. How can they get involved? What advice do you have from your experience?
I would say that there is a lot of good people doing a lot of really cool work. And I would say that try your hardest for your present, and that we're stronger together, and also to like celebrate discomfort. I think that's where we all grow. And I think that's why we're so scared about, we've been like listening to this like really polarized narrative that like, no, don't trust that person. No, if they vote for that person, I mean, they have these values. No, if they, like, so we're like all in our corners, like, we're like
bullshit.
Yes, 100% BS. But I feel like embrace, like go towards the middle, like pull towards the middle, and go and ask questions, and not be scared of being wrong. And but I think there's just a lot of cool stuff happening, and we just don't know about it. And there's a lot of leaders that look like you, and there's a lot of power within your community, and we can all do a little bit more. There's 2 little grains of sand.
Awesome.
Yeah. Mhm.
Well, Angela, it was really nice having you on the show. All your perspectives, all the stuff you've been involved with is very cool. I hope we can help kind of continue to spread these ideas out to like a larger base so we can get everyone working together and everyone having diversity of thought and being discomfortable because again, that is how you grow. I couldn't agree more. But it's been a pleasure to talk to you today. So thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Welcome back to season 3, everybody. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a good
Yeah,
day.
you're welcome. All right, everybody, take it easy. See ya. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Changing the Climate, the official podcast of Climate Change Realty. If you are very passionate about these issues and you know anyone considering buying or selling a home anywhere in the USA, then please visit ccrboulder.com today.